For me, it wasn't an easy path. And I think like secondary school is not easy. We throw all these kids into these classrooms. We're challenging them. They're moving between different subjects. They're going through this big social sort of evolution time. And for me, that wasn't like straightforward. And I thought I could be good at helping people with that. And I thought my experience of education just felt like I had something to offer.
We all want our kids to thrive at school. But what happens when they don't feel like they fit? When they lose confidence, struggle with a result, or start believing that one score will define their future? Today's guest is Adam Hipwell, and his story is one every parent needs to hear. He left school disappointed with his Year 12 result, made the courageous decision to repeat his final year at a new school, and discovered the biggest difference wasn't simply a higher score. It was finding a school community where he felt seen, supported, and challenged in all the right ways. Fast forward to today, and Adam's an educational leader, a teacher, a coach, a father of two, and somehow a musician. Every day he helps his school create the kind of learning environment that he once needed and wished for himself. So, what can you expect from this conversation? Well, we explore what really helps young people flourish, why relationships matter more than rankings, how parents can encourage effort over outcomes, and why a disappointing result is never the final chapter of your child's story. Because success isn't defined by any score. It's shaped by people who help us believe in what's possible. Welcome to this episode of More Than a Score.
Let's do it. Adam.
Right. Adam Hipwell. I am very excited. I get to do the introductions for the guests. Laura, I should check. Is that still okay for you? Do
you know what? I would not take the joy that it brings you away.
I do.
Yeah, he really loves it. I wouldn't take it away from you.
I mean, look, we're doing this like tangent already. I apologise, guest / Adam, but I love doing I've always been the family person to write the birthday cards. Yeah. I like the good little message. So, Adam Hipwell, it's lovely to have you on More Than a Score. Biomed student turned teacher turned pedagogy leader who now builds the support he once needed. The boy who failed Year 10 maths and could not wait to leave now shapes how a whole school teaches, Laura. Coached on the footy field by a premiership coach and never forgot the lesson. Lover of coaching, conversations and helping people. Experimental musician with 4 albums out across the US and the UK. Dad of 2 boys, present, patient and playful. Someone who only ever wanted to be seen at school and now makes sure others are. Adam Hipwell, welcome to More Than a Score.
Thanks, guys. I feel like we could almost just wrap up there. I don't know if I can live up to that. So thank you. That was a very nice.
Well, thanks for joining us. It was really good.
Now, I'm really excited to ask this first question because you have an interesting story. Were you happy with your score when you finished up at school?
Yes and no, or probably no then yes. So yeah, I guess like Dan sort of touched on there, I didn't love school. I did when I was probably younger, and then I became a teenager, and probably not uncommon to a lot of teenagers. I just was like dreaming of the day that I could get out of there. And yeah, like I just had this idea about just doing what I had to do, doing work when I needed to, I guess, in a way, rather than sort of having a bit more of a mature approach to my study. So finished up at Haileybury College and ended up getting a score of 34.9. So, yeah, that was a bit of a shock to the system. A couple of reasons why that happened. But then, I was speaking with Dad sort of after that all happened, and he came up with this idea about, well, why don't you repeat Year 12? And I had a friend of mine that I played a lot of junior sport with who was going to a different school down at St. Bede's, down in Mentone. So, yeah, and I had my cousin also going there as well, and just thought, why not? Why not give it a go? So, yeah, ended up repeating, got 72.05. It's so funny how I remember these numbers. Like, I've listened to a few of your episodes, and some people can't. Yeah, they are forever engraved in my mind.
Talk us through that moment, because I feel like there's such a powerful story in there, from your dad having an idea of, hey, why don't you repeat Year 12? To you then saying, well, I've got a cousin there, I know some people, I could go do this, and then actually going and choosing to repeat. For someone listening, they might not have ever even realised that you could. So my older sister actually did it twice as well. So we had a different model to think like, oh yeah, you could just go do that. But talk us through that, from idea to actually going, yeah, I will do that.
I guess like I didn't have a whole bunch of options when I first finished. So, and I knew I could do better, and I knew why I didn't do very well the year before. So, yeah, I think I was just excited about that idea about like proving to myself that I could actually do it. This might be getting a little bit D&M within the first, 5 minutes, but I did have a significant fallout with my friends. It was the late 90s, and I was friends with a lot of the guys that play sport. They might be listening to this now. Who knows? But it was one night where they weren't nice to my girlfriend when I wasn't at a party. And, I was really sort of hurt by that. And that sort of fitted in with a whole bunch of other stuff around boys' schools in the 90s and some of the ways they treated girls at parties. And I just thought, no, I'm not friends with you guys anymore. But, I've spoken to some of them since, and yeah, all good. Lots of water under the bridge. But yeah, that was sort of a big thing for me in where my year 12 was and where I was at mentally. And, I was a sensitive kid. And then I was sort of excited about this new opportunity. So, yeah, to go down to a different community, to potentially meet some people. But I think ultimately, yeah, I really wanted to do myself and my parents proud, and I knew I could do better. So that's where it sort of, how it all transpired.
You said about the original school that you were at, it was a lot of like tough love, alpha male environment, and you so desperately wanted to be seen in that space when you weren't really. And you said, I just didn't really fit. I'd love to know what that second school offered you that allowed you to, do better in that situation.
Yeah. So, yeah, the first school I went to, it was a big boys' school. So there was a lot of those traits, and yeah, I guess there were some fantastic teachers there, and whenever they were a bit more relational and got to know me, then I really thrived in those sort of contexts. So then when I went down to St. Bede's, I actually grew up not knowing really anything about religion per se. That wasn't part of our family. We didn't go to church or anything like that. And then I went to this Catholic community, and then I started to see the whole community aspect of it. I saw kids talking to, kids in different year levels, which wasn't really a common trait at this big boys' school I'd been to previously. I was still at a boys' school in my second one. It was a bit of a tighter community. I think a lot of the kids coming from Haileybury would travel quite far. So there's like junior campuses out in Keysborough, Brighton, out in Berwick. So look, I know the school's changed and evolved a lot since, but that's a time and place. And it was also just my experience. But yeah, I think it was, and also just the teachers, I felt like the teachers were a little bit more relaxed. And, obviously I came in with a bit of a different narrative. So they took an effort to just talk to me, or, I remember my house leader just spending a whole lunchtime with me, getting to know me. And for those things, that just really made a difference to me.
Yeah, and I think when you're a teenager, your peer group, like losing your peer group or losing close friendships is hugely impactful. Like that's one of the core losses and like all the grief associated with it. You're doing that as you go through year 12, so therefore it had this flow and effect as well. Oh. I guess then, so same person, different setting. It's sort of similar to Laura's question, but I wrote this down. So the fact that you change school, you're the same person, you go to this different setting, new school that you had never been at before. So what does that actually tell you about what a score is really measuring? Where you've been able to go through, failed, then exact same person, go to a new place, and then you get a score that's in the 70s compared to 34.
I think it's not all environment. It was also me. And, I needed to, failing was a learning. It wasn't failing, but it was not achieving what I wanted to achieve or failing by my measures. That was a learning experience for me. And that was a moment of growing up. And that's what year 12 is for a lot of kids, I guess. But yeah, I feel like the environment, it's more of that holistic approach to teaching. And that's something that I have taken, I guess, with me. That was a fantastic year that I had teachers like cracking jokes in class, which didn't happen as much. I had teachers wanting to just touch base with me, chat to me after class about how I was going and so on. So yeah, I think that's something I've always carried with me is like, you're teaching these students and you have the content and skills and you're trying to stretch them and challenge them. But ultimately, like all good teaching, and I think like it extends beyond teaching. Just starts with like great relationships with people and showing people that you got their back. And, I even spoke to my year 8 mentor this morning, and I drew up like a bit of a quadrant, and I spoke about high challenge, high support. A couple of them are being a bit naughty and cheeky in their classes. And I was like, I'm fully here to support you. But part of my role is I've got to challenge you as well. So I'm high challenge, but high support. So I think that was like reflecting, and probably, maybe that was lacking, or maybe I just didn't feel like I got it, the support aspect. I feel like I was challenged at my first school, but the last one just had that nice balance of like, we're going to challenge you, but we got you too. We're here for you.
So, Adam, would it be fair to say then the difference between feeling unseen and seen was there were opportunities to be part of teams, there was opportunities to be part of this community that seemed to have a great set of values that you went, oh, that's really, like, I connect to that. There was a personable approach where you felt connected to the teachers. And then at the same time, there was also, it sounded like a set of warm demanders who brought this high level of support and high level of challenge at the right time for you. Is that fair to say?
For sure, Dan. Yeah.
You also said, though, that halfway through year 12, things just clicked. And I was wondering which year 12 that was.
Yeah, that was the first time I did it. So to have I think it was Cat 1, Cat 2, and then Cat 3 were your exams. And yeah, I reckon probably rather than just sitting around at lunchtime, I was probably jumping into the library and doing a bit of that stuff. I mean, I would still hang out with a few people, but I became a bit more sort of driven, and probably had a couple of less distractions. So I think it was just a growing up thing, like going through that and that social thing. Like that wasn't, I still wanted to be friends with these people ultimately. Like it wasn't easy for me to just like go, oh, see you later. So deep down I was like, I'd still really love to be mates with them. They're funny guys. Like we have a lot of common interests, but probably don't know how to like tie it up in a neat bow, but probably just grew up a little bit and through a bit of adversity as well. The other thing as well, and I've done a little bit of reading. I've done read the Raising Boys book, for example, and it sort of like resonated with me a little bit that I was 16 turning 17 the first time I did year 12. And, in that book, one of his perspectives he shares is that perhaps boys should be a little bit older as they go through education. And I was probably quite typical of that.
You mentioned before your dad was the one with the idea for repeating year 12, and then, you were the one that then went through it. Did your dad ever say things that he noticed, or what happened at the end of the second time you did year 12? What was it like with your dad, and what occurred then?
Yeah, it was really nice to be able to sort of say, we did it. I would probably just also a little bit of background about what happened. My mum had a really large stroke when I was in about year 8. So that was also a big thing. Dad was just so busy, and he was just so flat out, and he was just doing his best to kind of keep the house afloat and going and supporting mum. And she had a lot of subsequent operations as a result of that. And, he was trying to support my sister and I. So I grew to appreciate that more and more and more. And so it was nice to sort of, in a way, be able to honour that as well. So, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing too, right? There's the score of 74 doesn't say underneath all of that, all those different things that you're managing, going through, supporting what your parents are going through, the family's going through. So, when you broke out into a really big smile. So for anyone listening, I hope you do watch it too, because you broke out into a big smile when you said, like, we did it. There's something underneath that besides those numbers, right? Like the fact that you said we did it, and just all since year 8, all those different things that you've had to overcome as well to then go back and get that.
Yeah.
I've never told this story before, but my dad was quite a disengaged teen and younger too. He was one of the youngest in his year level and pretty disengaged. When he got to year 12, he didn't want to do it. And his dad, who had a full-time job and, of the silent generation, his dad actually enrolled, and he did the subjects my dad did by distance. He had to go into the city to sit his exams, and doing that alongside his dad is what got my dad through. And I just think all of a sudden, you just see these wonderful men show up in ways that you think, wow, I didn't even know people could do that. And as you said, like your dad was so busy and there would have been so much on his shoulders that probably at the time you couldn't really comprehend. But to show up in that way and for you to be like, we did it, I think that's such a huge achievement. for you both.
Yeah, it was. And I reckon, I don't know if my dad will listen to this, but my dad is a little bit, his communication's not his strongest point. So for him to support me in the ways that he did, he would still say, I'm proud of you and stuff at times, but I'm probably a lot more expressive with my love for my boys than I remember him being. But I guess for him, it was, that thing about like a little bit more quality rather than quantity. Whereas now I sort of try and do both as a dad.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just shows up in different ways, doesn't it? I remember my father-in-law talking about one of his mates when he was the first time dad, was really proud and pushed his baby in the pram, and he saw some guys walking down the street and they made fun of him. So he never did it again because he felt like he was silly. You think of the generational difference.
That's right. Yeah.
So to two high school teachers here, forgive me for my ignorance here, but can you still repeat? Is that something that's a pathway or an option that for anyone out there now? Not that I'm like trying to say that's what you definitely should do, but is that an option that's there?
Yeah, you can. I do believe there is some penalty, isn't there?
No, not anymore. Not anymore. So there used to be. So
great.
Yeah, this is what happened when it was also a bit of a risk. I repeated 4 of my 5 subjects, and that was a bit of a strategical thing to be like, okay, I think for these 4, I'm strong at them and I can do significantly better doing them twice. But I also picked up another subject that I wanted to do. But yeah, ever since you can, like, if a parent is listening to this or a student, they can repeat and they don't get that penalty now, which I think is fair and kind of makes a bit more sense. So yeah, there's no penalty involved anymore.
Oh, that's so good. I didn't know that. I think in my head there was some sort of, like what you said, if you repeated a subject.
I mean, look, it's a nice segue as well to think of that next point, because so you've really painted this picture of this experience where you've gone back through, you've done year 12 twice, you then finished up and you got this better score. We did it, is what you said, and then you scored far better. And then I put down here the word drifted into biomedical science. So for anyone listening, you then went and started a year of biomedical science before realizing that you wanted to teach. I mean, that in itself is, I'm really interested to hear more about that. That led you then to go live and teach also overseas in London and different areas. While you were also studying, you went and lived in remote Northern Territory too. And now you're actually leading and overseeing how a whole school or a whole college can actually do really impactful teaching and work. Mm-hmm. You won an honour award for your work in VCE Outdoor and Environmental Studies. And I can see you slightly moving back just here. I know it's weird as you're hearing all these different things. You've also got a side business supporting teachers and students, and then also these albums that you've created with this experimental music that you create. Definitely not weird music. It's definitely creative, really engaging music. I'm fascinated to know, when you hear that back to you, what does that make you think?
I don't know. Life's a bit of a journey, isn't it, guys? Like, what does it make me think? I guess, yeah, sort of proud for all of the just continual evolution. And, reflecting, I've been really fortunate to have some wonderful friends that I've met along the way that have helped shape me too. But yeah, just like that life's a bit of a journey. And I don't know, I still feel that with myself, like a bit of a not finished product. I know that's a bit of a slogan at the moment, but I feel like it's true. So
I wonder why, Adam, why biomedicine, and then why from biomedicine to teaching? Can you tell us and the listener about that?
Especially when in your head you are not, and you literally wrote this, you are not a good student. That was like an idea you had at that point.
When I was putting in my preferences, I was like, why not put in something a bit, ridiculous, but who knows, it might work out. And then below that, I had the teaching stuff, and then I ended up getting into it. Now, like I had, there wasn't a extraordinary ATAR or anything like that, but it was enough to get into it out at VU. So I was just like, why not give it a go? Gave it a go for the year, but I knew that I wanted to be a teacher probably within halfway through that first semester, I guess, of that year. Before that, I was like pretty adamant I was going to get out of schools. And then I reckon halfway through that first time I did year 12, I started thinking about teachers and ones I liked and the ones I didn't like and what was working for me, and sort of thought, well, I think I would be a good teacher, but, just sort of left that there. Was still probably a bit adamant that nah, I don't think I want to be a teacher, like probably still think I want to get out of schools. But then the second time I did year 12, that sort of idea was growing more and more. Still put those courses down, but then got into the biomed, did it for a year, but knew pretty early on that I wanted to get into teaching. So stayed within the same university and transferred. I think back in the day, you did the human movement degree. I did a minor in humanities, and then, did the graduate's diploma of education after that. So that was like a pretty typical pathway that you could go into education.
What did you think biomed was? What did you think that degree was? You're like, I'll just throw it. If it sticks, great. But what did you actually think that degree was?
Oh, I don't know. That's a really good question. And I should probably go back and ask my 18-year-old self what I was thinking. But I was in all honesty, I was interested in anatomy. I was interested in physiology. I still am. So, and that's part of my teaching method is PE. So that was my strongest subject in school as well, PE. So the second time I did year 12, got a 40 for that. So for anyone who doesn't know what that means, you end up, I think it puts you in the top 8% of the state. And it's a little bit of a measure that schools use. So I think it was from there. I was like, well, okay, if I enjoy that, well, that might be, something where I could take it a bit further and see if I wanted to get into that. But then I remember getting into, you had to do a bit of chemistry and then also a lot of starting to learn the neurology of the brain. And I thought, I don't know if I'm that passionate about that. I think I'm more of a people person. So, yeah.
You make me laugh because I did a biology degree or science degree, but I majored in biology, and I was with a lot of the biomed kids in year 1.
Yeah.
And the chemistry, oh my God, like every chemistry experiment that I did, whatever I was supposed to make, it was burnt or it didn't come or whatever. It was just, I was absolutely hopeless. And I'd buddy up to this. I'm like, what's this supposed to be? I don't understand.
You were just trying to show the non-examples.
I was bloody hopeless.
I was probably a bit strategic in that class of who I buddied up with for the pracs as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, playing to your people strengths here. I think what's really wonderful listening to you speak, though, is the fact that so you weren't happy with the original Year 12 score. You then saw a different way to pivot and move through. You then completed really successfully and then put down, and you sort of knew that you wanted to do teaching, but you put down this different sounding title. I'm not sure if was there a little bit of a status aspect for you, that the fact that it sounded fancy or it sounded sophisticated? Was that part of it?
Absolutely.
Because I remember when I was in like grade 6, if people asked me what I wanted to be, I used to say marine biologist. And then I realised I was just saying that because I thought it sounded smart.
I think we all said that.
Yeah.
We all went through it.
Did we?
I think those 90s, early 2000s kids, there was a big wave of the marine biologists.
They must have, some good advice. I'm not throwing any shade on marine biologists, but I realised I was more so just saying it to sound smart as opposed to, do I actually want to do this? I don't know. But so as you go through, I'm really interested, what is really common from talking to so many people is that they change when they go to university or they change when they go to do an apprenticeship, they discover another option. What were the indicators for you that made you go, yep, it's time to switch and go to teaching?
I guess like part of the reason why I wanted to be a teacher was because for me, it wasn't an easy path. And I think like secondary school is not easy. We throw all these kids into these classrooms. We're challenging them where they're moving between different subjects. They're going through this big social sort of evolution time. And for me, that it wasn't the easiest path. It wasn't like straightforward. So I guess I just wanted to help. And I thought I could be good at helping people with that. And I thought my experience of that, of education, just felt like I had something to offer. And I really wanted to help people. To be honest, when I was younger, started, probably year 10 when I was in high school, started thinking about what I wanted to do. And I remember one of the things, like I either wanted to be a park ranger and just be out in the field and in nature, or what I wanted to do is I thought, I want to be a nurse and maybe I want to work with like kids, like something like that, or like babies or, something around it. I don't know. That's what I thought. I thought, that'd be cool to help people. And I thought maybe being a nurse. And I remember my careers, again, in this big boys' school, sort of almost being laughed at for wanting to be a nurse. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do that then. But yeah, I guess all of those thoughts came from me wanting to help people. And also, like, for me, I was really shaped by formative experiences about going camping and spending time in nature and with my dad and my grandfather. They were really profound times for me. So, yeah, I think that's where the park ranger thing. So then it's all fallen into place, and it makes a bit more sense that, you know, I get to help people, I get to help kids, I get to help teachers who are helping kids, and I'm still teaching the environmental aspect stuff. So I'm doing the outdoor and environmental studies. I've got the Year 12 geography at the moment, so it feels good.
It really resonates. Whenever I speak about going into education, I was always going to be a high school teacher. There was no way I was going into primary.
Come on, mate.
And the question is why? And it's, for me, I wanted to be an adult, the type of adult that I was seeking as a teenager. That I think, you speak to me in terms of, like, I wanted to be seen, but I don't know if I really let myself be seen either. I think it's really hard for teens to open up, to be vulnerable, and to create a space as an adult, because it's easier as the adult to create a safe place for teenagers to show up. I think was a real pull for me. I mean, I love the content too, but that's the reason it was always going to be secondary for me. And I feel like you might resonate.
Yeah, for sure. I really wanted to help kids during that period of time. And I mean, primary school, I look at what my son's primary school teachers do, and I am in awe of what they do. And it's incredible. And, you know, I've thought about it. I'm like, oh, could I go teach in a primary setting? Like, this is great. Like, everyone's so innocent and funny and happy and unconditional positive regard and so on, you know? So, but yeah, I like the challenge of teenagers.
Like talking to friends, talking to Loz, talking to different people in secondary, they sort of get better at putting up their mask. And so it's lovely that they've got adults around them that sometimes help them see that they don't necessarily have to put that on, or it's okay to be who you are. Because teenagers are so often pretending to be someone else that they think others want them to be, but everyone's doing that. So no one's actually sort of being themselves. So that's what great high school teachers do, is you can show up and just be you when it works well.
Yeah, for sure, Dan. And I think also I'm quite lucky with the subject that I teach, that a part of that is going on camps with the students. And so you get to see a different side of them, and vice versa. They see a different side of you. And, you know, I think I started by saying that I think all good teaching starts from, like, really positive relationships. So I do feel like those experiences and doing things that are a bit hard, like outdoor activities that are difficult and challenging, and push your comfort zones, can help build those, like, rapport. So yeah, I remember a really good friend of mine, really strong health teacher at the last school I taught at. And I was really kind of taken aback when he said it, but he's like, I'm almost a bit jealous of your classes. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? Like, he was a great teacher. His name's Ashley Mills. He's down at St. Joseph's Geelong now as like a deputy principal of wellbeing. But I sort of admired him. And then he said that about me. And he's like, oh, you just have these great rapport with all your students. And yeah, he's like, I don't know, I'm a bit jealous of it. And I think the camps and being able to do those activities helps foster that.
Yeah, there's something about when you go through adversity together, you know, productive struggle, not where you're just struggling and you can't actually achieve something, but there's something lovely when a group all has to work towards it, or you go through adversity together. That's a great way to create those bonds. And how lovely when you see those students that maybe don't always stand out in a traditional classroom, suddenly thrive, or they're the person, or they win the Rancher Award at camp as well, you know, like, it's really lovely. It's a nice thing to then think of, given the fact of your experience at school. You then move into a teaching degree. You then move into supporting schools with thinking about what great teaching entails. With your experience at school, what have you had to unlearn or relearn for great schooling to happen that you think is really helpful? Given that the listener is a parent or an educator, like, what are the things that you've had to relearn or unlearn about making school great for teenagers or kids?
Yeah, well, my first experience into teaching was I graduated and I wanted to go live overseas. So yeah, my partner and I at that time, we just went over and lived in London, and that was a baptism of fire. And it's a different context over there. Like some of the schools I was teaching in, well, you know, high needs, and that's where the jobs were. It was this need to be quite authoritarian. And so that was just sort of helped mold me a little bit, and I was still forming my idea about what a good teacher is. And I did bring that back with me a little bit. I definitely had to unlearn that here in Australia and then sort of go back to, oh yeah, I am here in Australia. Why did I become a teacher? Why did I want to do this? What sort of teacher did I want when I was a student? So yeah, I would say that was a bit of unlearning for me at the time. I think as well, the other thing is schools are really well intentioned, but now with NatPlan, now with the My School website, now with the transparency of the internet and social media and so on, and VCE schools are really striving for excellence in a lot of different ways. And so sometimes the harder you push, it doesn't always end up working for better success. Sometimes, like, you've got to find that balance. And yeah, I would say that for me, is like someone in my position now. And I think, you know, some of the stuff that I've picked up from you, Dan, through some of the coaching work as well, is that you got to be patient and you got to play the long game. And sometimes slowing down is the better thing to do. And that will actually help yield better results. But schools feel under pressure, and sometimes schools are impatient for results and to turn things around. So yeah, I think that's also another thing I've had to unlearn, is to just be patient and accept the journey a little bit. You know, I heard someone talk about change and improvement in schools, and sometimes glacial pace is breakneck pace when it comes to education. Like, these things take time, they're cultural, they're behavioural, they're based on habits. So that has been another thing. I run fortnightly professional learning for our staff, and I don't know if anyone notices that I do this, but I take a little bit of paper up with me and just have it there next to my computer as I'm speaking to staff. And part of that I say in there is just to be patient with the journey and okay with the journey.
If you're thinking about now for a student, what do you think would be of most help so that they can have a really positive experience in school?
What I say to my students is to just really be like aware of the opportunity that you have in front of you. It doesn't define you. It's not going to define the rest of your life. It's just one way you can get to where you want to go. And so I constantly would reinforce those themes with my students. But I also just talk about, well, you've also got this opportunity. So why not have a go? Why not challenge yourself a little bit? You know, I showed a clip of an NBA basketballer, Chris Paul. I don't know if this is getting a little bit too niche, but it was on a podcast of him with Rich Roll. And so he was speaking about, like, everything you want is on the other side of hard. But the way that you do that is you just need to stack the days, and repetitions remove doubt. So there've been like 3 themes I just keep revisiting with my students and just talking about, we have an opportunity. It is going to be a bit challenging to get there, but just keep showing up every day and you'll see change. But that just it takes time. You just got to keep stacking the days. So there's no silver bullet. It really is like a bit of a metaphor that's coming to my mind is either Shawshank Redemption, how he escapes from jail and he just chips away bit by bit. I don't know. Again, that might be a bit too niche. That might be a bit of my 90s, 2000s era coming through.
I don't know. I think Shawshank Redemption's a pretty timeless movie that constantly sits at the top 10 on IMDb. But as I say, IMDb, so a whole bunch of people listening like, I don't actually know what that is. But Laura, that makes me think of a story that you share about, is that okay do you want to share that thing around term 3 with the way that it normally goes?
Oh, yeah. So I often talk about the term 3 breakdown, especially at year 12, especially with the high achieving kids, the kids that seem to have it all together, the ones that, you know, show up in your class at the start of the year. They're just like gunning for a score. I'm doing this, whatever. And I find it's probably mid to late term 3. They just hang back a little bit. They take time to pack their books up and you've kind of like, okay, something's coming. And then you look at them and there's red rimmed eyes and they just are like, I can't do this anymore. It's too hard. I'd look at my watch and I'd be like, amazing. You are right on time. I was waiting for this to happen. This is totally part of the process. But now we're here. We can fall in a heap for a minute and then we'll pick ourselves back up again. But I always tried to normalize these things as part of the process because, gosh, it happened every year, term 3.
Yeah, you know what you're saying, Loz, is, ringing very true. I reckon it happens earlier, though.
Do you?
I reckon it happens around the end of Unit 3. So that's happening now at our school. So this week, all of our students are SACs, and I've noticed in the last week and this week, this is when that assessment push, the pace starts to pick up and they just have a lot more. They started, they're just rolling from one assessment to the next. So this is going to sound really harsh, but I actually said to my students, I was like, okay, who's feeling tired? Who's feeling like a bit overwhelmed, maybe a bit disorganized at the moment? And slowly but surely you get a few hands and I'm like, it's okay. I'm feeling that way as well. But I was like, guess what? We're not special. You're not special. Like every kid around the state is feeling that at the moment. So, and then I backed it up with but that's okay. It doesn't have to be the perfect year. You just got to keep fronting up and keep giving your best. And what can you control? Just have a good lesson today. Let's have a good lesson. So actually, like going back to the footy thing, I remember my coach when I was playing footy, I remember just saying like, I just feel like I'm not tired.
Is this Luke Beveridge, the Premiership AFL, the AFL Premiership coach?
Yeah, it is him. It is him. So yeah, definitely the best coach I ever had. And I remember saying to him like, I just feel like I'm quite tired out there and maybe I need to be fitter. And he just said to me, he's like, just remember like everyone else is tired out there. Like, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Like everyone else is. So it's kind of that same feeling that, for our students, like, guess what? Every other kid is starting to feel the pinch at this time of year.
And what was that phrase that you said came from Chris Paul, the NBA basketball?
There's a few. So one of them, he talks about like reps removed doubt. Everything you want is on the other side of heart, and you just got to stack the days, and you'll start to see change. So
yeah, that's so helpful, right? And it can become something that becomes a bit more, I'm imagining, empowering as opposed to all this stuff. VCE Year 12, end of high school is being done to me. It's like, well, what can I do? Well, I can just go do these reps and just do the best that I can and show up in the best way possible. Adam, we've nerded out a little bit here around education and that sort of thing. So I'm really mindful there. The thing that I really appreciate about you that I think is incredible is that we haven't even touched on this idea of like, so you do music on the side as well as obviously this passion you said that came from your grandpa and your dad around nature and also the outdoor education that you do. But I'm fascinated about the music. Talk us through creating four albums that are released through labels over in the US and the UK. Like, talk us through that so people get an idea that you're not just this education nerd that's joined us on the podcast.
Firstly, I take education nerd as a compliment, so thank you for that.
I mean it as a compliment too. Absolutely.
Yeah, so probably with the music, that was also something I just remember growing up and Dad waking us up, blasting his records and stuff. So, yeah, that was always like a bit of a passion of mine and kind of encouraged by Dad. Played a bit of music when I was younger, but I was just obsessed with sports. So it was like, Dad, when can I give up the guitar? Please just let me give up, which I did when I got to a certain level. And then got into my sort of early to mid-20s and I thought, I don't know, I might start picking it up again. So that's where it started. And again, that really good friend of mine, he went to St. Bede's and when I repeated Year 12, he was there. Like Dave had a bit of an interesting journey as well. He, after Year 12, got drafted by Adelaide and then traded to Carlton and then, that sort of wrapped up for him. So I guess he was also at a bit of a stage of like, what's next? So, yeah, we started like playing guitar a bit together and learning and being terrible, but then getting better slowly. And then that was a nice sort of segue for me when I finished playing sport. I was just to continue doing that. So, yeah, played in a band and we did a couple of albums together and we went over to Japan and played and things like that. And then, yeah, that sort of wrapped up and then kept playing with another guy from that band. And that was more of a improvisation thing. So our shows was always a little bit hard in mouth because it was always improvised and what we were going to do. But, yeah, it was quite sort of experimental and stuff that I was quite into. And yeah, I don't know, it's sort of evolved from there, Dan. Like I started moved from the guitar to the synthesizer and started playing a bit of both. And then I started recording stuff at home and it was more so just creating little worlds that I was interested in and that I'd sort of always wanted to do. But I guess when you're doing that with other people, sometimes, it gets pulled in a different direction and sometimes that's part of the beauty of it as well. But yeah, I was really fortunate, I guess, just to have a lot of sort of mutual friends that were into music and started digging a little bit deeper into that and stuff that was, a bit more, I guess, left of center. Making music, I guess I probably started 15 years ago or something. So yeah, started doing a bit of that. And then I'm just really passionate about it. I'm kind of obsessed. As soon as it's holidays, I become a bit sort of immersed, but really into art and creating stuff. So that's where that has sort of all gone, was just sort of making some albums or making an album and sending it off. And yeah, have this tape label over in the States who were really into it and was lucky that it got featured. There's a thing, Bandcamp Daily, which is like these features of certain albums. It got featured on there and then it sort of has gone from there. So one of the other things that I really enjoy is now like collaborating with people. So creating music, but also collaborating with some of those friends that I have done music with and played in bands with. So have another one coming out pretty soon over again in the States. And that's with like Dave, one of my friends that played in that first band, and Ivan, they sort of play all over that album as well. So it's just a passion, and I really enjoy the creative side. I've always just been enjoyed by art. It's that sort of human expression.
I'd love to know the feeling of standing up on a stage, not having anything technically prepared and improvising like a set. Tell me about because that for me is anxiety inducing.
100%.
So tell me for you, but what's the pull? Because I mean, not many people do that. In fact, we had some musicians on yesterday that spoke about, they did a music degree, and they said that the improvisation actually was done so that when they could go and just do a set, it took all the stress out of it. Like it was so stressful.
Yeah.
That it actually made them sort of appreciate the ease of a regular set. So the fact that you're choosing to put yourself out, I'm just really interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, like, it is anxiety inducing, but I guess we just play together for so long. We would meet up once a week and like we would just play music. A friend of mine had a studio at his house. It was pretty well soundproof, but at times it wasn't. So shout out to his neighbour Con, who sometimes used to give us the wind up.
How did Con give the wind up?
A bit late.
Is it like smacking the garage door?
Yeah, once Con may have been shouting over the fence in his, I think in his jocks, actually. So I don't know if that'll make the final cut. Yeah,
classic 90s. Classic 90s. The neighbour in the jock yelling over the fence.
Yeah, I think his words were, "Ivan, you are killing me." So yeah, that was one of our, I guess, sort of important moment along the way. But to come back to your question, I guess it was really exciting as well. And we just played together so much that we sort of, you have to listen and you really have to, really tune in to each other. So yeah, we just got okay with it. But sometimes, with improvising, sometimes it was a bit meandering or sometimes it did fall a bit flat, but we were all just into it and passionate about it, and just this idea about exploring was kind of exciting to us.
I've got two questions here, and I genuinely don't know which one I want to actually ask because they both I really want to jump in, but I think the important one right now is the fact that to the parent listening, you say, and you've talked about like effort and improvement in the pre-pod form that you shared with us. It's more about effort and improvement rather than outcomes. And listening to the way you're describing being creative, but also the way you seem to approach life in general, can you help unpack that for the mum or the dad that's, potentially looking at an upcoming report card or end of semester report card? Talk them through why effort and improvement or progress matter more than particular grades.
I think we're all on this learning journey, and that's in all aspects of life. So I think if you just are constantly thinking about putting effort to whatever it is that you are passionate about or whatever it is you're doing, if you can give effort, but also have this idea that you are just on this continual journey of improvement, then I don't know, there's a lot of, I think, examples of that turning into pretty good stuff. I read the James Clear Atomic Habits, and I get his weekly emails, and it's just like, it's a common theme. So yeah, I think when I bring that back to my kids that I have myself, I think that's what really I see motivate my kids. So they're going through that stage of like learning to read and so on. And so I can say to them, "Oh, you read that really well." They get chuffed with that. But when I say, "Do you know how much better you're reading now? Like, you have improved so much." I think you see them grow more because they recognize that themselves. It can be challenging and it's hard, but to see that reward for effort, I just think it's a lot more controllable. It's a lot more something that sits within your sphere. It's a lot more productive long term. And so, yeah, that idea that you're learning and evolving doesn't just stop at the end of year 12. That I think people that go on and do good things in the world and live these lives that they're kind of like, at the end of the day, they're pretty satisfied with, have this like ongoing approach of improvement and just getting better always.
I think that effort is repeatable. Right? Like the score may not always be, or the win may not always be, because the landscape and the environment and the conditions will shift. But the effort is something that, as you said, it's controllable. It's something that you can rely on, that effort. And if you continue to put effort in, you might not get the result first time, but eventually you will get where you're going. I think that's, as you said, the idea that it's controllable and within your sphere is a good point.
Yeah.
Does that work around when you think of the key things that most influence human motivation? So I think the fancy wording, Adam, would be self-determination theory, where, you know, you're talking about purpose, autonomy. You know, does someone feel like they've got control? You were just naming that before. And then the third one is about mastery. And that can sound as in like, you know, everything. You definitely don't, but it's about accomplishment and progress. So if people feel like they're making progress, so that could be really visible or it could be really small, as long as we're making progress, we're more likely to stay motivated. So I remember when sitting down in year 10, I did visual communication design. And my dad was sitting there going like, I'm worried about Dan's grade, because he was really focused on grades. And I remember the teacher just turned to me and said, so Dan, tell us right now on a scale of 1 to 5, like how much effort did you actually put in this semester? Now, only out of the three of us, I was the only one that actually knew. And I knew it was a 1. Because I was like, I actually, you know what? I had a new girlfriend and I just wanted to spend all my time with her and I was just trying to avoid doing any actual work. So I said 1. Like it's a 1. And I was really sheepish. I didn't say it like proudly. I was like, probably a 1. So the next semester, when we had the interviews and we'd get, 7 minutes with the teacher? Mm-hmm. She was like, so what is it now out of 5? I was like, this time I'd probably say 4.5 to a 5. And then the grade was much higher, but it wasn't about the grade. It was actually about me being more aware. But I think the thing with effort, listening to what you're saying, is it's more about the kid being aware, or the young person being aware, because they ultimately do know if they're genuinely putting in effort versus using a score to validate it, right?
Totally. Yeah. I also think that's a good approach for teaching. Like what is good teaching? And so, again, schools will want to put up these scores and these outcomes, but, you know, I've taught in some different contexts. I've taught at Broadmeadows. I've taught at an Indigenous community, and I've done some of my best teaching there. And you don't always get the best results, but it's like adapting to the group that's in front of you and value adding to that group. You know, I think that's also like a good thing about, well, don't worry too much about the results. Worry more about like what you're doing, like as a teacher to value add, or as a person yourself going through it. Like, how can you just improve yourself? Yeah.
So how would you describe success now then, given all that you've covered, what we've spoken about today, and now what you know about yourself? How would you describe success?
Oh, that's a big question, Dan. That's a big one. I mean, can I ask, like, what sort of context are you meaning that? Are you meaning that go anywhere with that, or?
Yeah, I think because our big aim for this podcast is to help people redefine success. So if we're clear that, and you're a true example of this, so your score does not guarantee success and your score does not define you, and you did it twice. So I guess if we're helping people redefine success, what do you hope we can redefine success to actually mean?
That's a great question, but it is such a huge question. And I think it's ultimately working out, well, what does success look like for you? I think is how I would answer that. I think, you know, a little thing I've been playing around with for a couple of years now is this idea of having a to-do list, but then also having a to-be list. And so I started have done like a little bit of journaling and try and do that once a week, once every couple of weeks. And for me, I think that's how I define my success. So I think about, you know, myself as a parent, like, am I being present? Am I being patient? Am I being playful? I think about myself at work, and am I connecting to those that I serve? One of my traits I want to try and embody is being radiantly alive and being a dynamic creator, because I think that's when I'm at my best. So yeah, I think having a clearer idea around what success means to you, and that can mean different things for different people, and it doesn't necessarily mean a score. I think that's how I would define success, is to just encourage people to dig a little bit deeper with that, do some work around that, and then you can be the best answer of your own success.
Can you say those two phrases again? So it was radiantly alive, and what was the other one?
Dynamic creator.
A dynamic creator. So I very much resonate with that. So in my home office that I've got up, I worked out a couple of years ago how many days it was until I turned 50. So I've got that up. And then I had a to-do list of like things that I'd love to do, like progress. I love a good goal. But then on the other side, I've got a list of things that I am grateful for in the moment. So it's like, I'm aware that I love things. I'm a planner. I love to see things ahead of time, and I like adventure. But then I also need to purposely forced slowness to slow down and say, well, what have I already got at hand, so that I can feel a bit more grateful. So listening to you describe that to do and the to be, I think that's a really powerful thing that I think could really help a lot of people. What about you, Loz? What's something that you're like, what does success look like now that you're hearing Adam talk through in all these episodes? I'm completely putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot.
But
success for me.
Yeah, well, given that Adam's just said, I guess, what does it look like for each of us?
Oh, I think success is much less goal orientated than it used to be. I think it's being in the moment, being in great relationships, having great connection, but also making steps towards, for me, I would like to make some kind of impact in this. I'm much more, you can talk macro or micro. I'm a micro girl. I like to kind of consider what's in my control, what's around me, and what impact can I make in those spaces through, just sort of showing up. I think, the big goals technically I've ticked a lot off my list, and I don't know if that's necessarily provided the success or the validation that I thought they would. So I think I know that success comes in the sort of the smaller things for me now.
That's really nice.
It's Adam somehow made this, or maybe not Adam. Actually, I'm throwing him under the bus. I made it now that you and I are doing more of the talking. I'm so sorry, Adam.
You're doing more of the talking and they're making me do more. You need to calm down.
Sorry, everyone. So as you think about all that we've covered, I think the thing that's like to circle back to the very start where it was this person that chose to repeat year 12. So you felt like success, you hadn't achieved what you'd wanted to, but success now is less around outcomes. It's more about effort. It's more about what you can actually put in, and then being aware of, it could be about actions, but it's also about the way that you're choosing to show up as a creator and, being dynamically alive. When you think of everything we've spoken about today, what do you think is something that we haven't mentioned that would really help the listener?
We've covered a few big themes here today.
We have.
I'm really not sure. Can I be brutally honest with that?
Yeah.
What about this, Adam? Maybe to help. This is one that I can try then is, what's the one thing that you hope someone listening to this episode takes away?
I hope that they just take away that life is a journey and that there is an opportunity with the Year 12, but it is just not, it's not the be all and end all. And that I think when you are in the moment, perhaps maybe as a parent or as a student, the weight of Year 12 can feel huge. Just know that so many people out there go through it, and just know that your life and what you do beyond that, I think in time, learn that perspective around your score. So it doesn't define you. It's not who you are. It's a snapshot of a moment in time. But, know that it's really based on this whole big industrial model of education that we have set up. But we know that life doesn't really fit that either. So, I would say that's what I hope they take away from that you will gain perspective over Year 12 of your child or of your own Year 12 in time.
I remember I don't know if your school does it, but when I was teaching Year 12, we would be brought in the following year with our VCE scores, and we'd have them up on a PowerPoint. You're nodding, yeah. It was projected up and actually highlight the outliers in terms of what was predicted, what you got, blah, blah, blah. And I remember sitting, especially in English, you'd sit with your cohort of educators, and sometimes they'd say to you, what happened with this kid? What happened? What's going on here? And every educator came from such a compassionate place that not one person sat there and went, oh, it's like, well, actually they went through this, or, they really struggled with this particular situation. And I hope, and I think you'll be the same, teachers really care about your kid. We're not here looking at them as a pile of data points on a screen, even though sometimes we're supposed to justify ourselves that way. Every single teacher was like, oh, but that kid was amazing in this. Or, you know what, yeah, maybe they were an outlier, but gosh, should have seen them at the formal when they were just tearing up the dance floor, So I think it's that idea too that, as you said, schools are a really well-intentioned place, and teachers really are there to support your kid, even though we sort of summarize them and wrap them up in this score. Gosh, it's so much more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And, sometimes in my role, I have to have those data conversations, or I have to talk about that data back to our staff, or have some of those meetings with our teachers. But I guess like one thing I always do when I'm relaying this to our teachers is to then follow it up with some photos of the graduating class of Year 12, or like I've followed it up with photos of the Mother's Day breakfast or the Father's Day breakfast. And it's just also remembering that they're not just numbers, that they are people, and there's a whole family that sit behind this kid. So, I think teaching, like, schools are really well intentioned, and teaching is full of just so many wonderful people who are really well intentioned and want the best outcomes for your kid, and understand that some kids it clicks in Year 12, but for some other kids it doesn't, and that's okay.
And I think too, if it's all right to add in, when you think of reading school reports, a lot of the time, like if you think of all the different grades or marks that you see, a lot of the time, especially in a primary school setting, but it can also be secondary, like the general comment or the thing where someone's describing, like the homeroom or the mentor teacher comment where someone's describing your child. So often people say that's the first thing that they go read, because it's beyond all the marks and the different things. It's like, well, do you actually know who my kid is, and what are you noticing about them as well?
Yeah, and it's important for us as teachers to remember that.
Adam Hipwell, we thank you so much for joining us and sharing such an amazing story and pathway, and also your openness and generosity with it all too. So I think the fact that you are in school, and the fact that you support teachers, and then you're also aware of what it's like on the other side, and you're a dad too, so you're aware. So you wear multiple different hats and perspectives. So it's a really, really helpful episode, and we really appreciate all the insights that you've shared. Loz, what if someone would like to nominate? Because people might have stories similar to Adam or different. So where should they send their inquiries or nomination? Is it morethanascorepod@gmail.com?
I think so. I don't usually say that. So yes.
You're giving me a look.
I'm like, yes. I'm the Insta. More Than a Score Pod on Insta.
That's the handle at Insta.
Yes.
All right. Adam, we would normally do, if we were in person, we would do a crisp high five. So I think, could I put it out to you that with your experimental music, if you could come up with a way to have some sort of crisp high five sound, but from your musical background, is that something we could do?
Oh, mate, I think you've taken it too far in that moment. No, we didn't.
Oh, sorry, brother. I thought
experimental musician has said you've taken it too far. That is the best thing I've ever heard.
I'd love to show you that. It is. There we go. I gave myself a high five. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.